All right. Well, we are live for the first time ever here on the Tyler Ice League College Football Network here on YouTube. Welcome to the morning huddle. We've got a lot to talk about today. A lot to talk about. I actually got to pull some stuff up, so bear with me. I'm going to let some people get in here, and then we're gonna talk week one of college football. It was a busy week, a big week, and looking forward to it. All right. So I got what I was looking for, and we're gonna roll through everything. You can see the ticker rolling across the bottom. Those are all your top 25 scores of the week that have gone on so far. Of course, there's a couple games yet to play. Tonight, USC, LSU. Tomorrow, Florida State and Boston College. I will be recapping each game in the next two videos. Um, Not quite in depth, but I will go over them and talk about them, especially if something crazy happens. More specifically in that Boston College Florida State game than anything else. So I've noticed an article here this morning. It was sent in one of my group chats with our buddies, and I appreciate them so much for all the info that I managed to get from them guys, let alone anything else. And Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports has put out an article about the NCAA considering granting athletes 5 playing seasons without the red shirt. The red shirt goes, you get 5 years no matter what, which is okay. So basically, they can play a 6th year. They get 5 years plus a little bit extra. We'll see what we can do here. Get this thing figured out. See what this thing says. Trying to work some kinks out, so I apologize to anybody who's tuning in now and seeing me kind of. All right, let's see if that turns out and does itself better. I think we're good. I think I fixed what I was missing, what I was messing up. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and carry on what I was talking about. 5 years of eligibility prior to the red shirt in college football and all college sports is, I think, a big deal. We see it more and more often, especially in college football, anyways. Players who, have an injury or something like that, and then, and that's their final year, their 4th year, and then they don't get to come back another year. Um, and try to prove anything wrong, any of those rumors wrong. I think this is a big deal. I think this is really important. I'm actually really really looking forward to this. I think this is a good. I think this is a good rule change. If you're going to make one, you might as well make this happen. I mean, it's part of an ever-changing world of college football that we're already seeing. Um, yeah, this is big for college football. I think we kind of know that already, but it's a big deal. Working on getting signed in here so I can see the chat as well. There we go. So there we go. Anyways, I like this rule. I think this is a big deal. I think this could be really important to the foundation of college football going forward. And it'll be really, really exciting. There's some other rules under consideration for change, more related to athletes pre-college enrollment. Um, so a big one here is permitting college athletes and recruits to utilize services of agents when pursuing professional opportunities without jeopardizing their college eligibility. So basically, when a college player hires an agent, they are no longer eligible in college football. That was a big thing, especially when they were looking into the draft. Now that's it. Um, looks as though seemingly they can retain eligibility after looking into the NFL draft, which is we kind of know to be a thing as it is anyways. In some sports, that would be interesting. So some interesting changes here, I think, and once they actually come across the horizon, we will talk more about them. But some things that I wanted to look into and talk about early here. So with all that said, let's go ahead and roll into this week one and kind of talk about some big things that we saw. And I kind of want to start. I want to start with the big game last night. Texas A&M hosting Notre Dame. This was a huge game for a lot of reasons for both sides of the ball, and Notre Dame was able to go in and be the more physical team, which is something we kind of worried about, especially with their ability that young front, the six total starts on that offensive line. This team was able to go in and they were able to kind of move Texas A&M around, especially as that game went on. They wore them down. That really felt like what we had seen from Michigan in the last few years, honestly. It just kind of wear them down, don't do anything too fancy, and you go on the road and you get a big time win. Um, Riley Leonard looked pretty good. I think there were some moments where he had his issues, but I think he looked pretty good throughout the course of the game. Jeremiah Love eventually got going and was the big part, of course, to go ahead touchdown, 21 yards to make it a 20-13 game, which would then be followed up by a field goal later to just close it out. Texas A&M fought hard, but the offense was questionable. The receiving core was very questionable. Connor Wegman was very questionable. This needed. This was kind of a big where are we at game, and Texas A&M showed that I don't think they're quite there yet. They've got some work to do. This doesn't mean that they are not a competitor in the SEC. I think they can definitely get themselves to be that position. They just really got to find that number one receiver. They got to find that guy who they can trust to go to in the big moments. And Connor Wegman was that guy. Le'Veon Moss was really solid as well in his role at running back. They just need to find that one star receiver that can kind of be a game changer for them. Once they find that, I think we're going to be talking about a more consistent team that has truly a lot of potential. This defense was fantastic. I mean, we couldn't have asked for much better, and that secondary was questionable going into the game. The secondary proved themselves. The defensive line was really good. They were constantly in the backfield making problems for Riley Leonard. This was overall a good game from A&M. They just weren't the better team in this one. Notre Dame was. They went out. took care of business, were able to get the win. And, they felt like they were kind of, I don't want to say anybody felt like they were in control until late. That fourth quarter hit, and it felt like it was all Notre Dame. They went and took the lead. Texas A&M answered right back with a touchdown of their own and tied at 13. And we were like, okay, when is somebody going to do something to pull away? When is somebody going to do something impressive? We'd seen a turnover from Connor Wegman already in the game. Another big turnover, forced by Xavier Watts, was ultimately the big game changer in this one. This was what we wanted from Notre Dame. I mean, we can tell that this defense is going to be very good. I do not think that this Texas A&M offense is going to struggle against every single defense they play. I think this is kind of I don't want to say a one-off because there are some other really good teams in this conference, but this is a situation where, yes, they looked bad. Yes, the offense wasn't all that great. But look at who they were playing. Look at how good this Notre Dame team truly is. I think that's a big deal in this one, and one that we really need to look at going forward. Notre Dame was able to run the ball pretty efficiently. Riley Leonard was a big deal in the run game. We finally saw the quarterback run being utilized a lot. Again, Jeremiah Love was pretty solid. The offensive line, as they went on, felt like they got better, and that was important for them because the offensive line was a big struggle point. That whole first half, Notre Dame couldn't really move the ball on the ground. They couldn't really throw the ball because they were struggling. Riley Leonard was getting hit. And then the second half came around, and hard to say what changed other than the fact that they just felt more comfortable. They started pushing Texas A&M around a little bit. They started being a lot more physical. It eventually led to them taking over the game, taking the lead late, and going on the win. Really impressed with Notre Dame and the toughness that they showed. I don't know that this doesn't change too many opinions for me. As a matter of fact, I'm taking a look right now at my top 25 that I had preseason. And I did not have Texas A&M in the top 25. However, they played well enough in this game that I think they are a top 25 team. I don't know if they're going to end up in mine. I got to go through the rankings and see, but I think they deserve to stay. I would assume the AP poll might probably assume the same, probably put them around 25, and that's okay. I still think this is a top 25 team. They did a really good job. They played really well. At the end of the day, again, they just weren't the better team, and that's okay. That's why Notre Dame's a top 10 team in the country. A&M hung around. A team that I certainly think could be in the conversation, especially depending upon what happens the next two nights. I want to look around the country here a little bit, talk about some big games. And, there was a game that people aren't going to talk about because it wasn't really a top 25 game. Nobody was really expecting it to be what it was. But I'm going to take a look over in Nashville, and we're going to talk about this Virginia Tech and Vanderbilt game. And honestly, I was extremely impressed with Vanderbilt in this game, specifically Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia was extremely, extremely good. He ran for over 100 yards in this game. You also had guys on this Vanderbilt side, Cedric Alexander. I think this is a guy that you need to pay attention to throughout the course of this season. Cedric Alexander, the running back at Vanderbilt, was really good. Honestly, I was genuinely surprised at how well and how big of an impact he was able to have. He only ran for 69 yards, but he was just consistent. He was a really good counter to Diego Pavia. The defense at Virginia Tech was able to get the focus on Pavia at certain points. And then you get Cedric Alexander busting a 4 or 5 yard run. And then it would be right back to, okay, what are we going to do? I was extremely disappointed with this Virginia Tech offensive line. They could not move the ball. They couldn't put together what should have been a really good run game when you got Bayshaw Tootin, Kyron Drones. This was downright embarrassing, to be completely honest, when you talk about Virginia Tech. I mean, this is a team I picked to be in the top 25. This is a team I picked to go to the ACC championship. And if they can't block at the line of scrimmage with a team that brings back 19 starters out of 22, I think this team's in for a big time letdown season, and that's really unfortunate. I think it says a lot about Brent Pry and this team. I don't want to overreact too much, but it is, I want to say embarrassing, but I don't want to take away credit from Vanderbilt because they've improved so much under the Clark Lea campaign here. I mean, you look at this team now compared to what they were 4 years ago, compared to what they were when Clark Lea took over 3 years ago. This team deserves the credit. This coaching staff deserves the credit. You went out in the transfer portal and got Diego Pavia. He becomes your starter. You also got Nate Johnson, who can also run a very similar offense. But you got Pavia. He comes in, and you almost turn into a spread triple option offense. You almost turn into that. That is a huge deal. That is a really, really big deal when you talk about Vanderbilt football. That they haven't been able to do this. They haven't been able to be physical at the line of scrimmage. They were the better team at the line of scrimmage for the first time in I don't know how long, especially against a Power 4 team. The first time since maybe 2018. I remember they played really well against Tennessee. That was a down year for Tennessee. I mean, this might be the first time they've looked this good since the James Franklin era. The problem is the SEC is so good and so much better because they just added two really good programs in Texas and Oklahoma. That Vanderbilt may not see the fruits of their labor here. They may never see it because of how little they truly care about football. This is going to be interesting to see what this looks like going forward. How does this look for both sides? Virginia Tech, can they answer back? Can Brent Pry get this team together enough to go out and win some football games? Can Brent Pry put this team in position to go compete for the ACC with the schedule that they've got in front of them this year? If that can happen, so be it. We can talk all you want about this being a really, really solid Virginia Tech team and this being a really good Vanderbilt team. But we have to see it. We have to see that improvement, especially at the line of scrimmage. They need to be able to block better. They need to get Kyron Drum's time. Of all the things that happen in this game, I would love to see the sack numbers, by the way. I don't know if I'm finding them anywhere here. And I'm not. But between the interception, the amount of times that Kyron Drones was sacked in this game, they were decent on third down. They weren't overly terrible at any specific spot. They just could not move the ball when it mattered most. Kyron Drones, again, 322 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and an interception on 22 of 33. He was not terrible, but he didn't have enough time to really make anything happen, to do anything special. When he did was when you were seeing Virginia Tech come back. They took that lead, and then the momentum went away because Vanderbilt walked right back down the field and scored again, which you don't see from Vanderbilt very often. One of the best games I've seen from Vanderbilt. This is their first win, by the way, over a Power 4 opponent in a season opener since 2005 when they played Wake Forest. They won that game 24-20. They win this game in overtime. Very impressive. No, neither of these teams are top 25 right now. But I'm extremely impressed, again, with Vanderbilt. Disappointed because I expected more from Virginia Tech. And, I'm probably going to end up being wrong, and that's okay. But it's crazy to believe how this might end up being, if things continue this way, a little bit of an overreaction, but might be a bit of a waste of a waste of a really solid roster. Clay, I see you in the comments. Virginia Tech sold everyone a bill of goods, and Diego Pavia is a certified China killer. Well, Diego Pavia, and one thing I didn't notice until we were in the game and we were seeing it, Vanderbilt hired Jerry Kill to be a part of this this coaching staff. He's not a big time, staff member, but he's an assistant, and I think that's really big to talk about when you talk about a culture guy. Jerry Kill is 100% a culture guy, and he's going to help breed what Clark Lea has already started, and I think that's a really important thing to think about and talk about going forward. Vanderbilt, their next couple of games, if we go ahead and look at their schedule, they get Alcorn State and Georgia State. I think they'll be 3-0 when they go face Missouri on the road on September 21st. So that's going to be a big deal. They play Missouri, Alabama, and Kentucky 3 straight games, 2 of which on the road. And then they get Alabama at home, so that's great. Um, it's going to be extremely interesting to see where they end up as they head into Ball State. If they can go in there 3-3, get a 4th win. South Carolina didn't look all that good. Vandy may go 5-7. May go 5-7. We will see what they look like later on down the line. But a big game, and a game that I felt was worthy of being talked about here on the Sunday afternoon. Again, as we continue to roll through college football Saturday and talk about some things that went on yesterday. Big time story game in Atlanta, Georgia. Hosting? I don't know. Georgia and Clemson playing in Atlanta, a neutral site game of sorts. And this one a little more neutral than the Oregon game a handful of years ago. But nonetheless, Clemson, as expected, did not really match up at all with this Georgia team. They hung around the first half. It was 6-0 when they went to half, and it was, it looked like Clemson was going to be able to hang around for a lot longer than we expected. And, the first half, they played well, but the biggest problem was the inability to move the football. Now, I don't know who's to blame here for this situation. I don't know if we're blaming Dabo Swinney. I don't know if we're blaming Garrett Riley. I don't know if we're blaming Cade Klubnik or Phil Maffa. I don't know who we're blaming, genuinely, because this team was just flat out terrible yesterday, if we're being completely honest. They could only run for 47 yards. Phil Maffa got 59 of them himself. Cade Klubnik responsible for 17, most of those by way of sack or just inability to push the ball forward on the ground with his legs. Cade Klubnik is supposed to be a really solid dual threat quarterback, and I have yet to see it in his entire career. I have yet to see this guy not fold when he's got a defensive lineman, a linebacker. When somebody's coming at him, he goes to the ground. He does not want to fight for extra yardage. There's not a lot of fight on this Clemson roster whatsoever. That's the thing I've noticed, is this team does not know how to fight for 4 quarters. I don't know where it went, because this was a team that would. This is a team that would slugfest, would duke it out with you for 4 whole quarters, and they don't do it anymore. They haven't done it for 3 years. Any team that punches them back, they fold hard. It's going to be interesting to me to see what Clemson looks like the rest of the year. I had them going 7-5, and that team yesterday looked like a 7-5 team. I don't care that it was Georgia. They hung around in the first half. They played really good defense. The moment they got punched in the third quarter, they quit. They were done. They didn't want it. I don't know what else to say about it. I genuinely don't, because, you go look at it, they gave up a 7-yard pass, a pretty solid drive early from Georgia to open the third quarter. They kick a 26-yard field goal on what was their most solid drive of the day, 12 plays, 66 yards, 5 minutes off the clock. And then Georgia answers back with 8 plays, 75 yards, and a touchdown run to make it 20-3. And it was over from there. They did not want it. They didn't want to stay in this football game. The top 2 teams in the ACC are in a world of trouble, and it seemingly looks like Miami, who jumped out, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. The top 2 teams in this conference in the ACC, the top 2, Florida State and Clemson, do not look good whatsoever. So then you have to go on and move down the line. Miami looks really good. Nobody else in the ACC looked good. Virginia Tech completely wiped themselves out of that conversation, and that doesn't mean they can't enter. They can't come back to the conversation, but they're gone from it right now. They're not in that conversation whatsoever. NC State struggled with Western Carolina. Syracuse struggled with Ohio. All the teams that you expect to have some semblance of a decent season, SMU looked like the second best team in the conference. And they played Houston Christian, who was not good at all. So, Louisville looked really good. Duke looked okay, I guess. Cal looked okay, I guess. Pitt was okay, severely just okay. The defense did not look good. Eli Holstein looked pretty good. That's probably a bright spot for the Pitt fans out there. Everybody that's supposed to be good did not look good yesterday at all. And well, the entire conference, I should say, just did not look good at all yesterday. Um, it's going to be intriguing what the ACC turns into, and how capable they are, because this is a conference that some have thought may be a two-bid league. Notre Dame, if you want to count them, maybe it's still a two-bid league, because Notre Dame plays a majority ACC schedule. However, I'm not putting that in the conversation. I think Notre Dame is a playoff contender. I think that win yesterday solidified them as such. They got to go win out, and then they're going to be favored in every other game they play. But they are there. I mean, Georgia Tech looked really good too, by the way. Kind of a surprise team coming out of the conference, so we'll see what they can do as well. It's going to be interesting. The ACC is going to be kind of a mess, I think, in 2024, and I'm all for it, because I want to see. You almost want to see the surprise team. You want to see that team that just kind of comes out there and goes, makes you question what you know about college football. I don't mind that whatsoever. So, a big game, a big win for Georgia. They move on to 1-0. They are for sure the undisputed number one right now in college football. I'll go on and just go ahead and order here. Ohio State and Akron. It was a little bit of a struggle in the first half for Ohio State. The second half turned around. They moved forward. They win 52-6. Pretty important game. No, not pretty important game. Just a pretty important boost of confidence. They play Western Michigan, I believe, next week. So another game and another chance to get right. Western Michigan was tough with Wisconsin yesterday, or Friday. So could be interesting. Will Howard looked really good. Jeremiah Smith, as advertised. I would venture to say that top 10 wide receiver in the country was a very solid prediction for Jeremiah Smith. I know it was just Akron, but 6 catches, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns in your opening game in the shoe. Not many people have been able to do that. So a big time game there. Oregon struggled. Another Big Ten team that struggled yesterday. Idaho came in and played tough. They hung around for as long as they could. They would only lose by 10, 24-14. Idaho loses. Played really well, but makes you question Oregon a little bit. Is Oregon that good? Is Oregon capable? One thing I will say, let's not talk about Idaho, and let's not act like we remember them as the 2013 team that we saw on NCAA 14 that we all love to rebuild. That's not the Idaho team that exists today. This Idaho team is a part of the Big Sky. The Big Sky has been a really good conference as of late in the FCS. Really for a long time, but it's getting a lot better, and top to bottom it's really good. Idaho was a playoff team last year in the FCS level, and they were pretty close to making the semifinals, I believe. If they weren't in them themselves, I cannot remember how that all unfolded. So, excuse me if I may be a little bit mistaken. But Idaho has been extremely consistent, extremely heavily improving, becoming a really good football team. This was another example of such. I think that it's a little early to just press the panic button. But I do think there is some reason to be concerned with this Oregon team, because they did struggle against an FCS opponent that they probably shouldn't have struggled as bad with. I just got done complimenting Idaho. I know they are a good team, but I don't think that this should have been a 10-point game at any point. I don't think this should have been a 7-point game going into the fourth at 14-7. So, truth be told, a little disappointing by Oregon. A little reason to be concerned. Not panic time. Texas. Part of my take 10 was Colorado State covering with Texas. I thought Texas would come out and, play really well, but I didn't think they wanted to put too much on tape. Well, the thing I didn't realize was they wouldn't have to in order to put up 52 and skunk Colorado State. So a big win sets up a big matchup where they will be favored in Ann Arbor, and I think they will win and probably control if things go the way I'm expecting. But I got more for Michigan later, so don't get too excited. Alabama hosting Western Kentucky, and Jalen Milroe looked really good. Justice Haynes looked really good. Goes without saying, this entire team looked really good. Ryan Williams, 2 receptions, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And yeah, this kid is 17 years old, by the way. coming out here playing in Division I college football and playing extremely well. Western Kentucky could not do anything. Alabama wins 63-0. Ole Miss and Furman. Oh, by the way, part of my Take 10, Alabama hit the over on them on their own. I had the over 59.5. I thought Western Kentucky would score a little more. I figured Alabama would get the 50s. They hit 63. They hit the over on their own. That was a big-time win for my Take 10. Furman and Ole Miss. Ole Miss came out, looked really good. Jackson Dart starts his Heisman campaign, along with Jalen Milroe on the other side in the game we just talked about. Starts his Heisman campaign with just, 418 yards and 5 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, nothing too crazy, I wouldn't expect. Really big, really good game. Juice Wells looked fantastic coming back from injury. Trey Harris was good. This was just a really good effort from Ole Miss. We talked about Notre Dame and Texas A&M. No need to go too much further into that game. Just a really impressive win for the Irish. Penn State went on the road to Morgantown, and I picked them to win last week. I picked West Virginia to win last week. I was wrong. Now, thankfully, where I went safe was in some of my pick'ems and stuff like that. I took Penn State to win, so I didn't lose too many points. But Penn State came out, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to be very honest about this. Penn State was the best Big Ten team to perform on Saturday. And I had them finishing 4th in the conference. Penn State was the best team in the Big Ten on Saturday. If this is what we're going to get all year, Andy Kotelnicki did a really good job. The wide receivers proved themselves. Something I made mention of a lot going into this game was the fact that West Virginia needed to force Drew Aller to be the guy. Force Drew Aller to make the plays. Put him under the pressure to perform and succeed. And what happened was exactly that. West Virginia came out. They were stacking the box. They wanted to stop the run game. And they were pretty consistent stopping the run game. What they were not capable of doing was stopping Drew Aller from throwing the football and doing it pretty well and pretty consistently. Was he great? No. 216 yards, 3 touchdowns. Trey Wallace was really good. 5 catches for 117 and 2 touchdowns. And 2 really big ones. Nick Singleton had a really big run on top of his 114 yards and a touchdown. A really, really great effort from Penn State. Super impressed with what they brought to the table. And Penn State, as a matter of fact, I think is, again, I talked about them being the best team. I think this might be a top 5 team after week 1. So we'll see where I end up going with that. I don't know what my top 25 is going to look like. I need to see a couple more games. I need to see the 2 games that are left to play before I fully drop my new top 25. But you will see it on Tuesday. Do not be mistaken. And when you see it on Tuesday, you'll know exactly what I think about Penn State. Michigan hosting Fresno State. It was a struggle. A long way through this game. It was a struggle. Donovan Edwards did not look good whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull these stats up here. Donovan Edwards, 11 carries, 27 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. He could not find anything in this game. He could not find the gaps. He just was unable to make the plays. And, thankfully, there was a guy out on the field that could, and his name was Khalil Mullings. Khalil Mullings needs to be the starting running back at Michigan going forward for them to have chances in games, especially the games that are big to them, especially next week when Texas comes to town. Khalil Mullings needs to be the starting running back at Michigan. I will say that one more time so you hear me properly. Khalil Mullings needs to be the starter at Michigan. Davis Warren was actually pretty good, 15 to 25, 118 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He threw his pick on a deep ball. He just underthrew it. It happens. Davis Warren gives this team the best chance to win. Alex Orji, 1 of 2 with a touchdown pass. It was kind of a gimmicky play because everybody was worried about Orji running. So, we understand what happened there. But Davis Warren, 100%, deserves to be the starter. Khalil Mullings deserves to be the guy at running back. Donovan Edwards is fine to be number 2 because he's really good at coming in when a running back needs a break and just kind of making a big play, being pretty consistent. The issue for me is that he just is not consistent on a down-to-down basis. And Mullings ended up getting 15 carries. Edwards got 11. There were 34 rushes total in the game. It was a balanced attack. That rush total for Mullings needs to be over 20 next week. And I'm just being completely honest. I don't want to be too harsh, but it's really imperative that Mullings becomes the starter. He's more shifty. He's got much better vision than Donovan Edwards does. And I mean, he averaged 6 yards per carry. 6 yards per carry on this same defense that Donovan Edwards could only muster up 2.5. It is very, very important that this does not go overlooked, and that Sharon Moore makes the right call and makes Khalil Mullings the starting running back. Very imperative. Colston Loveland was great. 8 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Needed to see a little more from this receiving room, though. Did not get a lot out of Tyler Morris, Kendrick Bell, Samaj Morgan. There were some moments, but we didn't get a lot out of them. I need to see a little more from those guys. The defense looked good, of course, headed up by a pick 6 from Will Johnson that sealed the game, made it 30-10. Let's turn this over to Fresno State for a minute because I do want to talk about them. They came out under head coach Tim Skipper, interim coach Tim Skipper, of course, being promoted in the wake of Jeff Tedford stepping down once again. Mikey Keene looked good. I know he threw 2 picks, but he looked good as a whole. It was a pretty solid day for the Fresno offense through the air. Running the football, they couldn't do anything. They averaged 0.4 yards per carry. I don't like that sack yardage gets brought into this, but so be it. That's beside the point. 22 carries for 9 yards for this Fresno State offense. It was pretty embarrassing, pretty lackluster, I would say, on the ground. But they were able to do a lot through the air, 235 yards. They had 2 receivers go over 60 yards. That was Magdalena and Jalen Moss. Jalen Moss was really solid yesterday. They were feisty. They were a really tough team, and they're going to be a bit of a problem, I think, in the Mountain West Conference. So Fresno State's a team that you kind of put over to the side. They don't play Boise State in the regular season, so keep an eye on the Bulldogs to maybe make some noise in the Mountain West. They're going to have to contend with Boise State, who is fantastic. I'll talk a little bit about that later. They're also going to have to contend with UNLV, who looked really good. I don't care that they played Houston, who's really bad. They looked really good against Houston in a Power 5 matchup. On from Michigan, Florida State plays later this week. Missouri played on Thursday. They won pretty comfortably. Utah as well over Southern Utah. Not too concerned about that one. Kansas beat Lindenwood. NC State struggled a little bit early, but were able to pull away late against Western Carolina on Thursday. Friday, Oklahoma beat Temple. So those are your weekday games that are out of the way. Tennessee came out, looked really good, but let's take a pause for a second. This is only Chattanooga. That does not mean that I don't think Tennessee's good. I think they're really good. As a matter of fact, I think this is one of the best offenses in the country, and it's going to be shown week after week. But just take a pause. Let's not go Heisman Trophy hunting yet. Let's not be giving Nico the Heisman yet. Okay, there were other players who played way worse opponents who had a little bit better days, or who played just as bad of opponents and had better days. So we're not going to go there, but we are going to give them credit where it's due. They were really good. They were really sound. Moved the ball well. A very good flow to the offense. This was a really good Tennessee team. I'm super, super proud of what they put together. They look good. They play NC State and Charlotte next week. I don't know what the spread is on that game. I'm going to actually take a look real quick at the spread on that Tennessee-NC State game, because I may give you an early play. Where's 7:30? Tennessee is a 6-point favorite. I think they're going to win by more than 6 next week against NC State. So just an early play if you want to get it here on Sunday. Tennessee -6 in Charlotte next week. Moving on from Tennessee, Oklahoma State with a 44-20 win over South Dakota State. South Dakota State hung around, played a pretty solid game. FCS number 1, right? I mean, same with Colorado playing the FCS number 2. They both had their ups and downs, but Ollie Gordon ended up being a big part of this game, able to have some pretty solid runs. Both of his touchdown runs were phenomenal. His touchdown catch from Alan Bowman was good as well. Alan Bowman looked good, 3 touchdowns. I mean, this was solid from Oklahoma State. This is probably the best they've started a season in a long time. I know that says 14 for Oklahoma State. My mistake. I hit the wrong button. I put the wrong number in for Oklahoma State, so my bad on that. I'll take full responsibility for the error. That should not have been. Kansas State beat UT Martin 41-6. Avery Johnson looked good. DJ Giddens looked good. K-State did what they needed to do. Got out of town. Clay in the comments, Nico's ball placement was really unbelievable. Something we haven't seen in a while in Knoxville. It was extremely impressive. I had this game on. I was quad boxing all day from noon until about 10:30, 11 o'clock when Michigan ended and Texas A&M Notre Dame was finishing up. That's when I stopped my quad box. But Tennessee was, again, super impressive. There was no clunkiness to this offense. It was very nice flow, very nice rhythm, and it started. It was like game started and they were ready to go. They were in that rhythm. Never went away. Again, super impressive for the Vols. So yeah, Kansas State, big win over UT Martin. Nobody's surprised. Miami goes to Florida, and this is a game I'm going to stop and talk a little more about because it was pretty impressive. Cam Ward, 26 of 35, 385, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. He took care of the football on the road. A big thing that we have not seen from Cam Ward in his career. Took care of the ball on the road, and guess what? Miami wins, and they win big. They were also able to run the ball. They ran for 144 yards. Xavier Restrepo, fantastic. Exactly what we know Xavier Restrepo to be. Elijah Arroyo, really solid. Isaiah Horton, really solid. Like, this was just a good all-around effort from this team. Multiple 20-plus yard plays. I mean, they were dominating from the very beginning of this one. Graham Mertz was okay. 11-20, 91 yards and an interception. They just could not move the ball. They couldn't figure out who their star was going to be. Eugene Wilson was probably the guy they needed to utilize a little more. But I don't know how much more you could use him. 7 catches, 50 yards. Elijah Badger, 3 for 43. I mean, both those guys were pretty solid. Montrell Johnson was your bright spot. But this kind of sets the tone for Florida this year. Billy Napier's seat has heated up exponentially from this loss and the way they did it. I picked Florida to win. I did pretty bad, actually. I went 0-3 in the top 25, like matchups that actually could go either way. Mainly because I went bold on 2 of them, and then I picked A&M because they were at home and lost. So, no excuses. I was wrong. Okay, you'll hear that a lot. But Montrell Johnson, a bright spot for Florida. Florida really looking rough early on this year. They do get Samford next week. That's going to be a big pick-me-up. And then they play Texas A&M in week 3. And Texas A&M offensively was tough. They get this game at home in Gainesville against A&M. We'll see what they're able to bring to the table for this one. But again, I want to state one more time before I move forward. Miami, really impressive. Kind of took over as my favorite in the ACC. They look like a top 10 team on Saturday, to be completely honest. So we'll see where they end up. They're going to 100% be rising up my board, where they were sitting at number 25 last week. They are 100% going to be probably rising through top 15. Arizona played New Mexico. New Mexico looked really good in the first half, hung around. This was a tie game at halftime. Or, sorry, no, it wasn't. It was a 27-24 game at halftime. Arizona would come out in the second half, take over this game, led by Tetaroa McMillan, 10 catches, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, that's player of the week caliber in any conference and at any rate. Extremely impressive. Devin Dampier, though, a guy that I think needs a lot of credit for what we've seen so far from Miami. Wow, I am really messing up right now. Devin Dampier at New Mexico, really impressive. Deserves a lot of credit at quarterback for Miami. Fuck, I did it again for New Mexico. I'm getting too ahead of myself. I'm seeing my screen stuttering a little bit, and it's catching me off guard, and I don't want it to look bad. So let me know in the comments if you're watching this live, whether or not this is starting to stutter a little bit. It doesn't say I'm dropping any frames, so I'm hoping it's just a me thing, but we'll see. I want to be able to do this weekly, so we're kind of testing some things out. Iowa found some offense in the second half. It was 6-0 at their lead over Illinois State at the end of the first half. They would go on to add another 34 to that. They would win 40-0 over the Redbirds of Illinois State. So that rounds out your Saturday top 25 games. USC and LSU kick off tonight at 7:30 on ABC in Las Vegas. This is a big deal. This is a big game for both of these teams. The over is 65.5. I'm not saying don't take the over. I'm not saying that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm saying if you feel so inclined, go for it. However, LSU is supposed to be, from what I've been hearing and reading, is kind of switching up the offensive look. They're going to be a little more physical. They're going to try to run the ball a little more. They're kind of going to look a little more pro style, a little more time of possession. If that's the case, this game doesn't even come close to 65. I think this ends up being like a 35-31 type of game. I guess that's close to 65, but I guess that's over 65 as a matter of fact. It could be even lower than that. I think this game, let me rephrase myself. This is a don't touch game, by the way. I'm not touching this game whatsoever. I guess the over can hit. I still think it probably hits, actually, considering I'm saying 35-31. I had 41-35 earlier this week. The over can hit. LSU can cover. I think they push more likely than anything. I think this game comes down to who took a field goal and who didn't, to be completely honest with you. And if it comes down to that, I think USC is more likely to have to take one. The LSU defense seemingly is going to be better under Blake Baker. USC, Danton Lynn is probably going to be solid. I think this defense is probably going to improve. But will they be better than LSU is the question. I don't know. I don't have the right answer on that. I won't have a right answer until later. So this is a big game. A game I think is must-see TV tonight. 100%. Sunday night, college football. Can't get any better. We got Labor Day college football as well on Monday night. Boston College travels to Florida State, trying to put Florida State at 0-2 in the ACC. To be completely honest, I don't foresee an upset, but this line's been back and forth between about 15.5 and 17. Boston College covers anything over 2 touchdowns. Bill O'Brien has had enough time and has a good enough quarterback where he can take this offense, I think, Thomas Castellanos, and do what he needs to do. By the way, Boston College has had a month to prepare for Florida State. Florida State has had 1 week to prepare for Boston College. Let's look a little further into this game. Florida State had to travel back from Ireland. That's a tough game. That's a tough thing to deal with. Coming back from a foreign country, dealing with all the travel, all the time change, and then being able to prepare all week, they're going to look sluggish. I think they're going to look pretty bad, as a matter of fact, this week. And I've talked myself into this more than anything. I've looked into it. I've looked a little harder at the numbers. And I genuinely think Florida State's going to come back and look a little sluggish in this game. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. Do I think they lose? No. I picked Florida State to win throughout the week. and I'm sticking to that. But it's the last leg. It's the last game that's on my take 10, where Florida State does not cover. I have Boston College to cover. If they do that, we're talking about a big. Talking about a bit of a concern, I think, for Florida State. I don't know if we're overlooking it, if we're overreacting to it, but we will see. So let's take a look at this take 10 that I did over this last week. Currently sit at 6-3 with one game remaining. Of course, that's Boston College covering Florida State. If they cover, we go 7-3 this week, which is a big time start. That's huge. Some things I missed. Virginia Tech, I had covering the whole way. I didn't think they'd even lose outright. I should lose points just for them losing outright in that game. Colorado State, I picked to cover against Texas. I didn't get it, so my mistake. Miami, Ohio against Northwestern. That game actually felt and was a lot closer than... I wouldn't say closer than we realized. I think it was just a poor game. I think it was really sloppy. Northwestern didn't look good offensively. Miami didn't look good offensively. They scored 6 points. Northwestern only scored 13 though. I mean, this was a 13-6 game with Miami driving down the field. Brett Gabbert throws a pick. Game over. Northwestern wins. Pretty disappointed by that. But my wins were impressive and nothing shy of it. Georgia, I was very adamant. Georgia 13.5 cover. I was very adamant. Georgia Clemson under 48.5. We got both of those covered. I even put those two in a parlay together. Big hit. Western Kentucky Bama over 59.5. Bama clutch. You see it on the bottom of the screen. Perfect timing. 63-0. Bama covers on their own. Kentucky minus 26.5 over Southern Miss. They win 31-0. That game was kind of hampered by a couple rain delays. Stanford plus 9.5 over TCU. They got that backdoor cover on Friday night. That was a big one. Michigan Fresno under 45.5. It hit because they scored 40 combined. So a good look so far. We'll see what Florida State does. What Boston College and Florida State do on Saturday. On Monday. One of these days, my words will work out perfectly. We'll see what they do on Monday. I will talk about that game Tuesday. Keep in mind, I drop my top 25 on Tuesdays. That's going to be probably the big key centerpiece of the show on Tuesday. But I've got some other things we got to talk about as well on Monday. I'm going to kind of do what I did on Tuesday last week from week 0. We're going to talk some overreactions, some things that people are just talking way too much about that should not be as important as they are. I'm going to do a little bit more recap, maybe a little bit more deep dive on a game or two that I prefer. But otherwise, it's going to be full steam ahead on next week, and we're going to be starting to preview games for next week. Friday will be the Michigan-Texas preview. I know that for certain, so I got to pick games that are going to come through between Monday and Thursday. I know Tennessee, NC State's going to be in there somewhere. Since I do this live, I can maybe do a little bit of a live show meeting for everybody and kind of show you how I pick these out. So I typically prefer to do a top 25 matchup. For whatever reason, this is not allowing me to do this, so I gotta close out and open it back up. So I normally pick top 25 games. So Michigan, Texas, 100% on that list. NC State, Tennessee, 100% on that list. It's a pretty light week, so there's not going to be too much. I think I'm going to do Cyhawk at some point this week. We'll definitely be talking about that one. Trying to see what I can find here. Kansas at Illinois. I think we might talk a little bit Kansas, Illinois. That could be a fun game. If you guys got any suggestions, those of you who are watching, I appreciate you. First off, make sure you leave a like, subscribe. Thank you guys for chatting, by the way. The likes and subscriptions are free. It just helps me out, gets the numbers up a little bit, and I appreciate it. Looking through here. Colorado, Nebraska, going to be on that list for sure. 100% Colorado, Nebraska. Not sure how many games I've given, but I may look into this App State Clemson game. App State looked pretty good. App State looked pretty good against ETSU. Clemson looks pretty bad. Upset alert, potentially. Who knows? We will see. So just some ideas. I'll get a little bit more and kind of a schedule put together for the week and get some things out. But yeah, a really solid week one. I'm going to do these on Sundays as often as I can. If I end up having to work a Sunday, I will then probably push these and do these on I will probably do these on a Saturday night post game, post the biggest games, and then we'll just kind of play it by ear. So looking forward to seeing what comes of everything. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This was kind of a little bit of an experimental thing. Hopefully it works out. I don't really have a great outro screen for this, so hopefully when I can go in on the back end and edit this, it'll pop up some it'll pop up an opportunity to add like an end screen or something here. But you can check out all the rest of my videos. You can go back on my previews, tell me where I was wrong. I'm all for that. Closing out with the chat. Clay, I appreciate you tuning in. Iowa scoring 40 points in a game in the year of 2024 is the 8th wonder of the world. The Tim Lester offense looked really good. It was much improved. You could tell that they felt a little more comfortable. Cade McNamara was more comfortable, a lot more confident. And, you know, they got lucky in some moments. I think that there were some times where you're playing a better team and you're going to turn the ball over. But 40 points, not bad. That's definitely a lot more than they scored last year against their FCS opponent. So excited to see what the year brings. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to rolling these out as we go forward. But for now, I'll see you guys on Monday in the video, and next Sunday when we recap everything that we saw here on Saturday. So y'all have a good one. See you guys in the next one.